Let's see if I can do this without all the ums this time, because it was starting to annoy even myself when I went back to listen to it. So this is going to be the final video picking apart this particular comment from this particular YouTube user at mellygermany9479. She left this comment on a video that I posted roughly 3 months ago, entitled, "I Dare You Zay, Show Me How Hardcore You Are for the Journey," in which I was addressing Zay Frank. And there's one of the first I was speaking about family and how important family is and how it's the most meaningful life you can have. And then Miss Melly Germany here, who has been stalking my YouTube channel for roughly 2 years now, left this very long, involved comment on that video. And I've recently made a few videos going through her comment and picking it apart paragraph by paragraph. So we already did all of these previous paragraphs, and now we are going to tackle the final paragraph. And then I will move on to her next comment that she left after this one. So, why do you think you know for certain what other people think and feel? Why do I think that, Miss Melly Germany? I think that because I'm a 40-year-old person. I'm a 40-year-old woman. I have 40 years of life experience, not just with observing other human beings, but observing myself, analyzing my own mind, my own psychology, my own desires and fears, my drives, as well as the desires, fears, and drives of other human beings. I also have a fair amount of formal education in human psychology and abnormal psychology, so on and so forth. But and not just formal, but my own personal education, because I continuously well past I'm like 20 years out of college at this point, out of any formal school, but I still read about almost any kind of human psychology, how the human mind works, human nature versus animal nature, so on and so forth. Any kind of information like that I sort of soak up like a sponge. I've had 40 years of sitting and thinking about why I do the things I do, why other people do the things they do, and also thinking in a more philosophical sense about what the point is of life, why are human beings here, what is our ultimate goal and drive as a species, so on and so forth. And I also have at least a fair amount of education and experience in reading the minute facial expressions of other human beings, their body language, and picking them apart based on these things. So that's why I think I know, well, not for certain what other people think and feel, but I am confident that I can best guess it, at least with most people in most situations. I am confident that I can analyze and draw upon the vast archive of knowledge that I've already gained into the inner workings of our species, to work out what other people are thinking and feeling at any given moment. So that's why. I never said I knew for certain about every other person, but I will say that I'm about 90% sure for most people. So let's leave that there. Moving on to the next sentence. Why do you think that everybody has the same standards as you, and if they don't, then there must be something wrong with them? I don't think that everybody has the same standards as me. I didn't say that in the video. I stated in the video that almost everybody would want certain things over other things. I excluded people who were unintelligent and people of a certain psychological disposition, such as psychopaths. Why did I exclude those people? Well, I'll give you the example again. When I was in high school, I went around saying that I actually didn't want children or a family, that I didn't want to be a mother. And those were not my actual thoughts or feelings. That was more of my mother's voice speaking through me. That was an idea that was sort of downloaded into me because I had been groomed from a very young age to live the life of an artist, this sort of romanticized idea of an artist. And that typically does not go hand in hand very well with being a stay-at-home mother and wife. One requires a more stable life and lifestyle. The other one is way more about just narcissistic, having experiences, at the expense of possibly your own stability and your own good health and the stability and good health of those around you. And also, to some degree, as a teenager, I was worried that I would not do a good job as a mother. So I had convinced myself for a good chunk of my teen years that I did not want to be a mother and I did not want to have kids. However, that quickly changed my freshman year in art school in Chicago when I was trying to work out what I wanted to major in. And that led me down a path of trying to figure out what I ultimately wanted. And at that point, I was far enough away from my mother and a lot of outside influences, and I had enough psych classes under my belt and a good enough education at that point from the prep school that I went to, which taught me how to think instead of what to think, that I was able to, in my freshman year of college, work out that all I really wanted was to be a mother, a stay-at-home mom and a wife and a homemaker. Just wandering around Chicago, listening to my headphones and thinking over and over and over again and working stuff out. That was what I realized was actually I don't want to be an artist. I don't want that lifestyle. I don't find it to be meaningful or fulfilling. I'm not actually wired to be an artist as much as many other people I knew and was going to school with. I had other classmates. There were other students at my art school that, they would wake up every day and they would have to make something. They were inspired to make something every day. They were very creative. They would just, turn one thing into another thing. And you just give them a piece of paper and some thread and they would make something out of it. Whereas I could go days or weeks or months or years without making anything or making very little in terms of painting or drawing or your typical visual arts pursuits. And I was just fine with that. It didn't faze me. But I noticed and I worked out that I was far more inclined to think in more psychological terms, to picking apart why I do the things I do, why I desire the things I desire, why people in general do and desire the things that they do and desire. And I also worked out that I've actually always been a very nurturing person, that I was always that kid who was bringing home animals, stray animals, injured animals. I was always that kid who mothered my pets and saw to their every need as much as a kid could. I was always very highly empathetic. I had a lot of affective empathy, meaning when a loved one or a pet that I loved was obviously injured, wounded, in pain, it was as if I could feel their pain and suffering. So all of this added up to me, the fact that I was very concerned with, human nature, what made human beings the way they are, child development, human development, and the fact that I have a very nurturing, caregiving nature. That sort of made a light go off in my mind that, I'm meant to be a mother. That's really what I want. I don't want an endless string of meaningless relationships, one fling after another, which is, if you look into what a lot of, the most well-known artists, what their lives were like, that's a lot of it. They didn't have typical families. If they had any family whatsoever, they quite often didn't have long-term partners. They would go from one relationship into another, or sometimes they would have one long-term partner, but they would be constantly in one affair after another behind that partner's back. And I just didn't want any of that. And they were constantly just seeking to have new experiences and pushing the limit of, what it seemed like what their minds could handle, what they could create. And I didn't want any of that. I just wanted a stable, secure family life. So that's the example, my own personal example, that I will give you to demonstrate the fact that a lot of people out there don't really know what they want. They don't actually know what drives them. They don't know what they're afraid of, so on and so forth. The reason for this is various, but quite often it's because either their caregivers, their parents did not teach them how to think like this, did not teach them how to suss out such information about themselves, and or they did not go looking for that information. They did not go looking to learn that, and or they have a low IQ. I don't know, they're developmentally challenged. So why do you think that everybody has the same standards as you? And if they don't, then there must be something wrong with them. Well, again, right there. And again, I'm a very average person in most ways, other than possibly my intellect, which seems to be above average. I can only, live for so many years and have so many experiences with so many other people before I have to come to that conclusion. That's just the way it is. But for the most part, my fears, my desires, my motivations are very basic and very average. They fall well within the range of average on the spectrum. And so therefore, if you just were to take it as, a sampling of the population, well, most of the population is going to constitute the average, right? Most of the population is going to constitute the standard. They represent the average. They represent the standard. And again, I am a part of the average, and so I do feel comfortable with speaking for most of the population because I'm well within that range. Again, at least for most things. And so therefore I will say that people who are truly have different standards, again, I think that they are likely either they have a psychological issue, like they are a psychopath, because psychopaths don't necessarily need things like a purposeful life in order to feel fulfilled, and they don't necessarily need things like feeling connected to other people in order to feel fulfilled. Psychopaths, quite often, they just need a sense of being in control, sometimes of hurting people, just being more powerful in order to feel fulfilled, or at the very least, to I don't know how to put it. At the very least, to make them feel satisfied for at least a little while, right? But most human beings out there, and again, I'm not the only person to say this, greater minds than myself, very intelligent people, very well educated people with those little pieces of paper called diplomas from universities, have put forward the, I'm going to go ahead and call it a fact, the fact that human beings, on average, in general, require a purposeful life, a life of meaningfulness, in order to feel fulfilled. And they also require connection, a sense of connection. We are not a rogue species. We are not great white sharks, right? We're not tigers. We're human beings. We are a familial species. We are a community species. We like to feel connected with each other. We like to have partners. We like to have families. We like to have friends. We like to have camaraderie. We form clubs. We form all kinds of social groups because it is necessary for our ability to flourish, and again, to feel like we have a fulfilled life. We don't do well alone. We just don't. Go research the results of anybody who was ever put in solitary confinement while they were imprisoned. They start like losing their minds. It's just fact. There are just certain basic facts about what makes a human being, and that is one of them. We are a familial species. We must feel like we are connected with others in order to be any shade of happy or fulfilled. And we also must feel like we have a purposeful life, not a life where we're just sitting around, jerking off, playing video games, working some dead-end job to make enough money to survive and consume. That's not a purposeful life. And anybody who's just living to do that, ultimately, at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, will not feel fulfilled. But they won't necessarily know that. If they were not taught or didn't figure out somewhere along the way to go inward and reflect upon themselves and try to understand themselves and what motivates them and the things that they need to really enjoy their life or feel like they lived a good life, they were not taught that. If they weren't taught that, then it's very likely they will have an overall sense of just feeling unsatisfied with their life. They might be able to distract themselves day to day from that feeling of dissatisfaction with mindless material distractions like playing video games, like going shopping. But ultimately, they need these things. And so the point I'm making here is that, unfortunately, I think that most of the population is that. They are people who do not actually know their true desires. They do not actually know their true standards. They don't actually know themselves. They were not taught to figure themselves out. They were taught to be consumers. They think that consuming will make them happy and fulfilled. They think that getting the newest version of the next iPhone, a prettier car every couple of years, fancier clothes, a new hairdo, so on and so forth. They think that will make them happy. And it might make them happy for a short period of time, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, they still always end up feeling unfulfilled. And so that suggests a level of idiocy. So that's what I was getting at when I said, I speak for most people, and in fact, I even speak for those people, because they do, for the most part, even those people who are unaware of themselves, they still have the same standards that I do. But it's just a matter of they don't realize it. They've had false standards and false desires, false aspirations downloaded into them by their parents, by their friends, by societal expectations, by, watching movies and, listening to certain kinds of music, thinking that they want to be celebrity superstars, not realizing certain things like celebrities have a shorter life expectancy than police officers. Maybe if they understood certain things, like they wouldn't want what they want. And I maintain that they don't actually want a lot of the things that they think that they want. So again, that suggests a level of idiocy. And so that's why I said that unless, anybody with, so quoting myself as accurately as possible in the video, I said, anyone with 2 brain cells who isn't a psychopath would choose a family, over doing something like walking on the moon, if they were made to choose between one of the two. Nothing saying you can't maybe do both. But if you were made to choose between one of the two, anybody with some good common sense and a good sense of self, who isn't, a total idiot or a psychopath, they would choose the family. So I stand firm and in my statement. Okay, Miss Melly Germany. Yep. So let's move on to the next statement, the next sentence. So there must be something wrong with them if they're an idiot or if they're a psychopath. That's something wrong, right? I think most people would agree if you're dealing with a psychopath, there's something wrong with them. There's something fundamentally wrong with psychopaths, right? And I think most people would also agree that it's not right to be an idiot. It's not desirable to be an idiot. It's not desirable to not really know yourself. Okay, so that means there's something wrong there with that person. All right. Yeah, I'm practicing taking this stuff a little bit more calmly and even paced, but it just so doesn't feel like me. But still, like when I go at my pace, it's my words in my mouth can hardly keep up with my thoughts, and I stumble and I say the word a lot. It's not even a word, but I say I use fillers like that because I'm trying to catch up with my thoughts and supply the proper words to get my thoughts across. But all right, here we go. Do you not sense that there is something not quite right for you to speak on behalf of everybody and proclaim that everybody given the choice will always choose having a family over everything else in their life? So again, I was not speaking on behalf of everybody. I was speaking on behalf of most people. I excluded the people who didn't even have 2 brain cells, the idiots. Although I have to say, I think that I would even include most of them, because even though they just don't know what they really want, their standards would still be pretty much roughly the same as the average, as mine. All right, they just don't understand their own standards. But I also excluded psychopaths, and I'm also excluding, aliens from outer space and pod people. You count them in everyone, in the pool of everybody. So I'm not speaking for certain outliers. I'm speaking for most people. Do you not sense that there is something not quite right for you to speak on behalf of everybody and proclaim that everybody given the choice will always choose having a family over everything else in their life? No, I don't feel that there's something not quite right about it. I feel that it's very right. I've already made the argument over and over again that if the meaning of life is to live a meaningful life and to have a purposeful life, and also one of the requirements is to feel a connectedness with other people and have something akin to a partnership or a family, well, then settling down and having children with a partner, having that family, checks off all the boxes quite nicely. It's the ultimate way. It's the point I was trying to make. It might not be the only way to have a meaningful life, but it is the ultimate way to have a meaningful life. All right. I also made this point my argument by pointing out to you, the difference between Amelia Earhart and women like her who've cropped up in throughout human history, and they chose to forego having the family, settling down, having kids, and they pursued some kind of great accomplishment of some sort. They were badasses in their own right. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying that they weren't like Amelia Earhart. I'm not saying she wasn't super cool. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that when you think about it, Amelia Earhart, as big of a name as she is now, and as inspiring as her story is now, eventually within the next 2,000 to 3,000 years or so, her name and her story will fade entirely from the memory of our species. We've certainly had other figures like Amelia Earhart in the last several thousands of years. We've certainly had other women that were total badasses doing totally badass stuff. And I'm sure that their story and their name was passed on for many generations, and I'm sure they were an inspiration for many little girls and so on and so forth. But then eventually they were completely forgotten. Even if their story was written down and stored away, let's say in the Library of Alexandria, well, that shit went up in flames, right? All written knowledge of their names, their stories has been destroyed just, through the passing of time. And then, of course, eventually, after several generations, people will forget. People will stop passing down that information in an oral sense. And so that then that person, their life, everything they accomplished, all the inspiring stories, their name is just lost to time. And that's the end of their impact on our species, on society, on the world as a whole. In comparison, if you were to then compare Amelia Earhart and the women like her throughout human history with their counterparts, with the other females of their generations who chose to just settle down with a husband, with a partner, have some kids, have a family, not only did it make an impact on the world, just rearing children, rearing the next generation of our species, rearing the future of our species. Kids who would go on to have kids, and all these kids would, they would either have families of their own, or some of them would do big things. That's also going to have a huge impact on the world, but also ultimately, those women have now passed along their DNA, their specific mitochondrial DNA. And long after Amelia Earhart is dead and gone, well, she's dead and gone, but long after we've forgotten her as a species, long after she's just not even a whisper on the wind, no one will remember her eventually. And when that day comes, I can almost guarantee you that unless our entire species is wiped out, I can almost guarantee you that there will still be women walking around with the same mitochondrial DNA as the women who chose to settle down and have families in the same generation as Amelia Earhart. You understand? So let's say, for example, Amelia Earhart had a sister, right? And that sister chose to have a baby, or let's say she had a best friend, rather, then they wouldn't share DNA. Let's say Amelia Earhart had a best friend, and Amelia Earhart went on to do all this stuff she did. Basically, what she did, she flew a plane around the world and disappeared, right? She likely crashed and died. And we tell that story as an inspiration to our daughters. Like, no, you don't have to have a family and feel connected with a partner and experience the joy of birthing children and teaching them and watching them grow up and seeing them have ice cream for the first time and hearing them call you mommy and nursing them when they're sick. And no, you don't have to do that. That's worthless. Just go out and fly a plane around and crash it, Now, so, let's say, so Amelia Earhart did that, but let's say, she had a friend or a best friend who chose to go the other route and have kids and a husband and a family. Well, Amelia Earhart didn't have kids. And so again, thousands of years from now, when nobody remembers Amelia Earhart, the DNA of her friend who chose to have kids will still be around. It will still be walking around in women, making an impact on the world. So if a part of having a meaningful life, which is the point of life, if a part of having a meaningful life is making an impact on the world, then you could easily make the argument then that it's the women who pass down their mitochondrial DNA and rear children who will further our species into the future and so on and so forth, and will have a large ripple effect ripple effect consequences and so on and so forth on the world. Those women, for sure, they have a much greater impact and therefore, by extension, much more meaningful lives. Have I made that clear enough? I've said it so many times. I just want to make sure that shit really sinks in. All right? Boy, she's having a family. So, yeah. So that's why. Anyway, that's why I made the argument in the very beginning in the video. That's part of the reason why I started making the argument that the ultimate thing is to have a family. It checks off all the boxes, assuming it's, a good family, assuming it's not a bunch of narcissists abusing each other. That really is where all the gold is. And that really is going to ultimately, I think, not just in the short term, but in the long term, that will be the most meaningful life and will have the greatest impact. So, yeah, the whole point, and the hope was and has been, what is the ultimate life for achieving a meaningful life? Not what is the only life, not what is the only way of achieving a meaningful life, but what is the ultimate way to achieve a meaningful life? And I just gave you, I think, a perfectly adequate comparison. If you want the ultimate way to achieve a meaningful life, your best bet is to have a family rather than go off and pursue some silly dream of flying a plane around the world, or something similar to that, All right? All right. I do find it, so yeah, we're right here. I do find it very puzzling that you are, so I don't feel I don't feel that it's not quite right. I feel that it's perfectly right. Okay? For the reason I just explained. If they are maybe not everybody, but most people, if given the choice, if they are of adequate intelligence and they know themselves adequately, instead of laboring under delusions, that they've been carrying around from, again, projections of societal standards and parental standards and so on and so forth, if they really know themselves, if they really understand themselves, if given the choice, yes, they would choose the family. So, all right. I do find it very puzzling that you are making statements as if they were fact. Why do you find that puzzling? There are lots of statements out there that are fact. I said several statements in this past video that are fact. For example, that human beings require a purposeful life in order to feel fulfilled. That human beings require a sense of connection with other human beings in order to feel fulfilled. Right? Those are facts. Those are some pretty hard facts there. I'm not the first or only person to ever say that. So maybe exactly what statements are you referring to that you claim I'm stating as fact that you seem to disagree with, that you seem to think are not fact? I think that you're puzzling, dude, because you're acting as if you don't understand these very basic things that I'm pointing out to you. But then also, like, somehow you were deemed to be qualified to work with autistic people. Like, that seems like a pretty high stakes profession. And I think that somebody who has that profession should be a little bit more aware of facts like the ones I've been stating. But anyway, all right. So, all right, continuing. If you really can't make the distinction between your wishes and values and the wishes and values of others, and if you really think that if people do have different ambitions, dreams, and a different set of values, that this means that there is something wrong with them, then I am afraid that I have to tell you that there is something rather worrying about your attitude. Why? Why does that? I'm sorry. So, for example, let me give you an example. So, I'll reread part of it real quick. If you really can't make the distinction between your wishes and values and the wishes and values of others, first of all, yes, I can. And if you really think that if people do have different ambitions, dreams, and a different set of values, that this means that there is something wrong with them, then I'm afraid that there's something wrong with your attitude. So, okay, what if I told you that I think there's something wrong with serial killing psychopaths and serial rapists who choose to, rape women to death whilst disfiguring them and murdering them and scalping them and wearing their hair as a wig, there are lots of people out there who have differing ambitions and dreams and values. And yes, there is something very wrong with them. There's something very wrong with their ambitions. There's something very wrong with their dreams. There's something very wrong with their set of values. Do I have to get into, I already made a video within the last few days talking about good and bad and right and wrong. And yes, these things exist. And yes, you need to make the distinction between these things. It's important that our species does so. Right? So there are a lot of people out there that have ambitions and dreams and a different set of values to my own, that yes, I can very soundly, confidently say they are wrong. Their ambitions, their dreams, and their set of values is wrong. It's sick. It's unhealthy. Not just for themselves, but for our society as a whole. Why does that imply to you that I have a worrying attitude? You're just looking to pick a fight, honey. And I've already said the reasons why I think that is. I think it's because you're connected with the network of child traffickers and ritual child abusers that I've been trying to expose, that I've been talking about in previous videos on my YouTube channel, that I've been writing about in my WordPress blog. I think that you are connected with them for many, many, many reasons. Because you popped up on my YouTube channel very shortly after I started releasing videos about those people. Because I worked out that a lot of my suspects, who I believe to be a part of this network, seem to be Caucasian and of German descent. If I'm going off of your picture on YouTube, you seem to be quite Caucasian, and your YouTube handle is Melly Germany. These people go out of their way to gain access to children and vulnerable adults, like developmentally challenged adults, through their jobs, through positions and their employment. And you seem to have one of those jobs. And also, as I've stated in the past, your very stalkerish behavior, how you've been hanging around my YouTube channel for about better part of 2 years, if not over 2 years now, when most people would have moved on to other content, especially when you consider that I do not have the biggest following of subscribers on my channel. Like, I hardly have a large channel at all. Most people would have maybe watched 1 or 2 of my videos and then just forgotten about my channel altogether and moved on to other content that YouTube was suggesting to them. And certainly most people, I think you're the only person who's gone out of their way to essentially write whole essays in the comments of some of my videos. And I've already gotten into why I think that is some of the reasons. I think that, for one thing, I think you're trying to goad me, lure me into debates with you with the intention of distracting me from focusing on exposing this network of child traffickers, child abusers. Although I feel like I am exposing them because I have a pretty good hunch that you're one of them. And I'm going out of my way to mention them even in the videos where I'm addressing you. So for those of you who don't know, some of my primary suspects in this network are people like Hosea Jan Frank, also known as Zay Frank, Zefrank. His father, Joachim Frank, who is a Nobel Prize winner. Basically, his entire extended family. And then, of course, friends and associates such as Jonah Peretti. Jonah Peretti, who was the founder of BuzzFeed, the news platform. Jonah's sister, Chelsea Peretti, her husband, Jordan Peele, and the list goes on and on. I've made plenty of videos in the past talking about other suspects, but primarily focusing on the Frank family because I can only spread myself so thin, So, I mean, right there, I guess, nice attempt, but you're not exactly totally succeeding. I also have to guess that it's possible because I do think that a lot of these people are not the most creative people and not the most original people. I think that they quite possibly steal, a lot of their content, a lot of their ideas, so on and so forth from others. I think they just know how to kind of manipulate people into giving them ideas. And so I do think that could be another reason for this. You're trying to lure me into debating with you so that I will give you a lot of creative intellectual content and ideas that you probably don't have the intelligence to come up with on your own. And there's a good chance in some context or another you will try to take credit for my ideas and my realizations. Maybe in a book, maybe in an essay or something that you're writing, or even just trying to pass it off to your employers or coworkers to make yourself seem more intelligent. I've had people in, my own personal life do that to me. I've had family do that to me, steal my words of wisdom and my insightfulness and try to pass it off as their own. And And again, how did I end it with the last video? I said that would be very uncool of you, and that would make you an even bigger loser than I already think you are. And how's that for ad hominem? You like some of that? So, there you have it. I think I did a much better job this time of not using fillers, like but also at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel quite like me. But maybe it's something I can get used to. We'll see. So yeah, the next video will probably be me tackling her next comment. Her next comment is even dumber, really. And will at most probably only take up 1 or 2 videos. I'm thinking about just trying to squeeze it into one video, because and again, let me point this out also. You have yet to offer a solid argument on your side. I'm making all of these points to uphold my end of the debate. The mitochondrial DNA, the purposeful life being necessary, so on and so forth. I am giving you perfectly adequate examples of why my side of the argument is more valid. And you are failing to do that. At most, you have said that you have friends who've chosen not to have families and that they are perfectly happy and have perfectly loving relationship with their families. And again, the point is not to be happy. The point is to have a meaningful life. All right? Those are not the same thing. So you're not rebuttaling, you're not rebuking me or coming back at me with any kind of reasonable argument that holds up against my argument. So I outclass you when it comes to debate. You're just becoming tedious and annoying and obnoxious. I really encourage you to up your game when it comes to critical thinking and picking apart your own argument and finding the flaws in it and whether or not it holds its own against your opponent. All right? So, Avidazé, from the States, from stateside. How are things over there in, what are they, Deutschland or Goose-Stepland or, whatever you want to call it. Bratwurstland. Are you even really from Germany? Are you even really over there in Germany? Are you sure you're not maybe like someone like Zay Frank pretending to be a chick from Germany? I mean, Zay Frank is of German descent. Are you sure you're not just some fat guy sitting in Baltimore wearing women's underwear and jerking off to the sound of my voice? So, because I mean, I've put out plenty of videos on my YouTube channel that actually show me. They show my face. They show, my surroundings. It's a lot easier to confirm that I am who I am and that I'm from where I say I'm from than it is with you. You're being a lot shadier about all this. So that's another strike against you, just in terms of being able to trust you as any kind of a legitimate person, and not an alien from outer space or a devil worshipping child abuser. Anyway, all right, you know what? I'm gonna stop prattling on. Good night, Miss Melly Germany. I'll come back at you again later.